Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's Burning Clay, and I am back with what is probably going to be my last BT8 deck profile for the Digimon TCG. Now, as you can see, today we are going to look into one of the more popular decks out there, and that is the Armor Veemon deck. But before we do, I have to say a big thank you to anybody and everybody that has tuned in to watch one of my videos so far. It doesn't seem like a big deal to many, especially given how popular a lot of people are on YouTube's, but over the past week, I finally cracked the 1,000 view mark, which again, I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but I was able to do it with just 5 or 6 videos, I believe. And in all honesty, when I started doing this, I figured that it was going to take me probably 100 videos or so with 10 views each to actually hit that mark. So if you guys are here for the first time, I hope you enjoy this content. I hope you come back. If you have actually watched multiple videos that I've done so far, I just want to say a huge thank you. Again, like I said, I know 1,000 isn't a huge number in the grand scheme of things, but considering that I'm just doing this for a little bit of editing practice and to be able to talk about things that I enjoy, I do appreciate it. But that's enough from me. Let's go ahead and get into this deck profile. So first up, we are going to look into our Digitama. Now, we are only going to run 4 Digitama, and that's going to be 4 copies of Demi Veemon from BT2. Now, this has the inherited ability of on your turn once per turn. If this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, you gain 1,000 DP for the turn. Now, we have some differing opinions based on whose videos you're watching as far as deck profiles, as far as who's the best Digitama for this style of deck. The popular opinion seems to be Upamon, which would give you the draw 1 ability if you attack and your opponent has a card with no Digivolution sources. I've also seen a little bit of the BT3 Demi Veemon, which allows you to draw 1 when you're attacking with jamming. And then I've also heard a few people talk about the starter deck, the Ult Force Veedramon starter deck, Demi Veemon, that gives you plus 1,000 if you have 8 or more cards in your hand when you attack. I just see more benefit from this Demi Veemon. With Upamon, yeah, it's always nice to have that card draw, but we have no way of necessarily guaranteeing ourselves to strip Digivolution sources from our opponent on a regular basis. So you're kind of just hoping that they hard play something to be able to pull that draw off. The Demi Veemon that gets you the draw 1 when attacking with jamming, we have no way of jamming. Well, we do have 1 card that'll have jamming in there, but it's not a consistent threat enough for us to put in a Digitama for that. And then I could see the plus 1,000 with 8 or more cards when attacking with the starter deck Demi Veemon, but I just believe we do have ways of unsuspending our Digimon naturally in this deck, so I just feel like it synergizes the best with the deck, in my opinion. Alright, we're going to move on to our level 3s, and the first level 3 that we're looking at is 4 copies of Veemon from BT8. Now, this has the on-play ability to allow you to reveal the top 4 cards of your deck and add 1 2-color blue card among them to your hand. The rest go to the bottom of your deck. This is probably the only real deck that this Veemon adds any value in. We do have 12 searchable options throughout the deck with the multicolored blue cards, but even then, I'm still considering running less of this Veemon than some of the others, and maybe like switching up the ratios, because we're talking, 12 out of, I think this deck runs 34 Digimon cards, and only a third of them are searchable with this. So I there could possibly be a better way of switching up our ratios. And now that I'm thinking about it, I probably would reduce this card. Next up, we are going to look at 4 copies of Veemon from the Imperial Dramon starter deck. Now this also has an on-playability to let you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, and you can add 1 card with free in its traits among them to your hand, the rest to the bottom of the deck. You could argue more easily than not that this is the better version of Veemon in this deck when it comes to searching. Like I said earlier, we only have 12 options that are searchable off of our BT8 Veemon. This card actually has 23 searchable cards. Pretty much anything from your level 3s up to your level 4s are searchable with this minus 1 level 4 card that we're running. We do have a level 5. It's not searchable either. And then, I mean, you could look at any of your level 3s and any of the level 4s that we really want searchable with this. So this is definitely the better search card for you. Like I said, we'll probably end up reducing the BT8 Veemon, but this Veemon is definitely a 4 of in this deck. Next up, we are moving on to Veemon from EX1, which has the inherited ability of on your turn once per turn. When this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, you gain 1 memory. Like I said, we do have a few ways of unsuspending our Digimon on our turn, whether it is a native ability or tamers or the like. So being able to gain a memory here to kind of reduce the cost of some plays or potentially just get a memory back for free is really nice, and I think it has to be included in this deck. Moving on, we are looking at 2 copies of Veemon from the Ult Force Veedramon starter deck. Now, this has a native ability that we're not really worried about because we will not be running Ult Force, but the main thing we want is its inherited ability of when attacking, if you have 7 or fewer cards in your hand, trigger, draw 1. So this is just making sure that no matter what, we always keep plenty of cards in our hand to where we always have options that we can play. Like I said, we are running only 2 copies. This would be one of the prime candidates, I would say, as far as swapping up the ratios. Maybe we can add 4 of these and reduce the BT8 Veemon down. Because I do think this honestly adds a little bit more value than the Searcher does. And we're moving on to our last level 3, which is going to be 2 copies of Veemon from BT3. Now this is the Veemon that has the native ability of jamming, meaning that it can't be deleted in battle against security Digimon. This card really allows us to be really aggressive early on and not really fearing losing a body on the field unless we happen to run into some sort of option card. This, along with the starter deck Veemon that we just talked about, is another target for increasing its numbers. I could see us running 4 of these to allow us to really have the chance to be aggressive early in game and kind of trying to put our opponent on the back foot as quickly as possible. All right, let's get into the stars of the show, and that's our level 4s. So instead of keeping the suspense on things that I know that you already know are going to be in the deck, I just figured we'll put all of these cards together. So we are going to run 4 copies of each of Lydramon, Magnamon, and Flamedramon. These are the Veemon Armored Digivolutions, and they all come with Armored Purge, which is when the Digimon would be deleted, you may trash the top card of the Digimon to prevent that deletion. So basically you just get to take your Flamedramon, Magnamon, or Lydramon, put it in the trash, suspend your Veemon underneath it, and you still have a body that you could potentially Digivolve right back onto and continue your turn. Now let's take a look at each of these individually right quick. With our Lydramon, when Digivolving, you get to suspend one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So since we got that blue-green synergy going here. We get to tap into that green ability of suspending your opponent's Digimon, which could potentially set us up for getting around a blocker or setting up a potential piercing, or just reducing our opponent's numbers down a little bit. You also have the Flamedramon that gets, when attacking, it gets plus 3000 DP. So he goes automatically from a 5 to an 8k Digimon, and then suddenly we have a better chance of actually surviving with a security check. But the strong boy of the group is going to be our Magnamon, which comes not only with blocker, but the ability of when digivolving, you can unsuspend this Digimon and it gets plus 2000 DP until the end of your opponent's next turn. For each card with armor form in its traits in the trash. So if you are going through this game really aggressive super early, you could look at a ton of DP boosting on this Magnamon, which suddenly makes your level 4 more like a level 6. Moving on to our last level 4, and that is going to be 3 copies of Kumamon. Now this is a hybrid card, which means that it can digivolve on top of one of your tamers as if the tamer was a level 3 Digimon. But we also get the added bonus of when digivolving, we can trash one Digivolution card from the bottom of one of our opponent's Digimon. Now, a lot of people are adding hybrid cards into the Armor Veemon deck, and Lobomon seems like it's the popular pick when it comes to trying to add one. And I know for the most part that the purpose of the hybrid card is supposed to be kind of like that late game finisher, the one where you have no more moves on the board, your opponent's all of a sudden down to no security, you just need to be able to attack them one time, you pull out the hybrid on top of one of your tamers, game. But it doesn't always work out perfectly, right? You might end up in a situation where you have no other option but a hybrid in hand. Lobomon doesn't have any benefits, so at least with a Kumamon, you would get the extra benefit of being able to take a Digivolution card away from one of your opponent's Digimon, potentially taking away some sort of inherited ability that they would want. So any chance that we get to actually weaken, if we had to play this in the middle of the game, to be able to weaken our opponent's Digimon, I think we should take that opportunity, which is why I'm planning on going with Kumamon rather than Lobomon in my deck. Now we're going to move on to our only level 5 of the deck, and that is going to be 3 copies of Chimeramon. Now I've said this in pretty much any other BT8 deck profile that I've done, that I believe that Chimeramon is the most popular card in the BT8 meta because you can put it in so many different decks, and this is no different. The reason it's so popular is because it is a DNA Digivolution Digimon, which allows you to DNA Digivolve from any 2 colored level 4 cards. Then, when you Digivolve, you may place 1 level 5 or lower Digimon from your trash under this Digimon as its bottom Digivolution card, and then up to 4 of your opponent's Digimon get minus 1000 DP for each of this Digimon's colors until the end of your opponent's next turn. Then on your turn, this Digimon is treated as having all the colors of its Digivolution cards. While this Digimon has 4 or more colors, it gets plus 4000 DP. So first off, you're looking at something in this deck that is hard to come by in any of the other BTA decks, at least the ones that I've done deck profiles on, and that is the ability to get up to 4 colors underneath Chimeramon for this extra plus 4000 DP. Here you could take Elijahron and your Magnamon, and you could DNA Digivolve into your Chimeramon, and then you could take your Flamedramon from the trash, put it underneath, and suddenly you have blue, yellow, green, red, and white. You have all the colors that you need in order to be able to get that extra 4,000 DP, and then on top of that, that was actually 5 colors if you were tracking. Suddenly, you've got 5 cards that are 4 cards that are getting minus 5,000 DP. You're going to make a huge dent in your opponent's side of the board that you probably aren't going to make in any other deck. So this one has the best ability to be able to use Chimeramon at its full power more than any of the other decks that I've seen so far. Now we're going to move on into our options, and our first option is going to be 3 copies of Lightning Blade. Now this is one of our armored formed option cards that allows you to play it while ignoring color requirements as long as you have an armored form Digimon on the field. Its main ability is for one of your Digimon with 2 or more colors to get plus 2,000 DP and piercing for the turn. In security, you're going to be able to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, which is that typical green trait. But what we really want to focus on is that main ability, because the DP boost would give this Digimon a chance at actually surviving through security. And then you need to be able to take the piercing trait whenever you can get it. Being able to eliminate both a body and a security with one swing is huge. Well, let's just think about this DP boost for a second. Like I said, it gives us the chance of actually surviving through security. That plus 2,000 would allow Lydramon to be 7k. Flamedramon becomes 10k because he has that plus 3,000 boost already. And then you could see Magnamon potentially getting up to 11k, depending on the circumstances. And that's just using this card. There's other ways that you can combo stuff together to where you can have extra DP boost coming in, and you could be potentially looking at your Digimon being even stronger than the 710 11k and really getting up to where they could be challenging even level 6s as far as DP goes. But moving on, we're also going to be running 4 copies of Fire Rocket. Now, much like Lightning Blade, this is a armored form option card that allows you to use it while ignoring color requirements as long as you have a Digimon with armor form and its traits in play. Its main ability is that it gives one of your Digimon with 2 or more colors security attack +1 for the turn. It does have the security effect of deleting one of your opponent's Digimon with blockers, but we're mainly hoping to find this in our hand to where we can really be aggressive early. Like I said, with the way this deck likes to play, you want to be as aggressive as early as possible and try to whittle your opponent down before they really have a chance to react. If you can find 1 or 2 Fire Rockets in your hand early on in the game, you are looking really good and feel good about your chances. Now let's take a look at our last option card. That is going to be 3 copies of Armored Texture. This is another card that allows you to ignore those color requirements as long as a Digimon with armor form in its traits is in play. Now this card has the main effect to allow you to trash the top card of one of your Digimon with armor form in its traits, and then you can then Digivolve into another card in your hand with armor form in its traits for its Digivolution cost. If you do that, you get to unsuspend this Digimon. This gives you the way to start being really creative and start combining multiple abilities from multiple armored forms. If you did not know, you can carry over effects from one armored form to another for the turn. So let's just say hypothetically we have Flamedramon on the field, we have Flamedramon in our hand. We attack with Flamedramon. Flamedramon gets our plus 3,000 DP boost. He's sitting at 8k. Goes into security. He survives the check. Now he's sitting there suspended. We could Digivolve into another Flamedramon, but we don't have a target on the field. So what we do, we play Armored Texture for 0. It allows us to trash the one Flamedramon. We could put another Flamedramon in our hand right back on top of it. It unsuspends, and then it attacks again, so we get that 3,000 DP boost. However, the first 3000 DP boost is still in effect. So instead of being a base 8k Digimon, it is now, or a base 5k Digimon, it is a 8k based Digimon. So it would become 11,000 going into security. And then you could even take into effect another one where you have that same Digimon. Now you want to be able to block your opponent. So you unsuspend and then, or you trash it away and then you put your Magnamon on top of it. Well, Magnamon gets plus 2000 DP for every card that is in the trash with armor traits. So you just put 2 of those. So that's 4k DP on top of its 7k DP on top of its 6k DP from the 2 Flamedramons. So what's that? That's 4k, 6k, 7k is 17k. So you have a level 4 Digimon that is stronger than most level 7s in the game. Does anybody know of a level 7 that's 17k naturally by itself? So you could really start getting creative, make some really powerful combos using this card as long as you have enough memory on the field to be able to make your plays. Alright, now we are going to look at our tamers, and first up we are running 3 copies of Davis. Now this has the at the start of your turn, if you have 2 or less memory, you set your memory to 3. But its on playability allows us to reveal the top 3 cards from our deck, and we can add 1 blue and 1 green Digimon card among them to our hand. The rest go to the bottom of the deck, and then obviously its security effect is to allow us to play it without paying its memory cost. Now, Davis isn't quite as powerful as it's going to be in the Imperial Dramon deck, simply because we don't have the number of green cards to really allow for that consistent green Digimon draw that we would. Now, 31 out of the 34 Digimon cards in this deck are blue cards, so we're always going to be able to have a good chance to pull at least 1 card, and then every now and then we might get lucky, find our Lydramon in there as well, and be able to get 2 cards into our hand. Still, it holds value simply for the fact that it's our memory setter, and that it's going to allow us to put at least 1 card in our hand on play. Now we're going to finish this deck off with 3 copies of Davis and Ken. Now this is a card that at the start of our turn, if we have a blue Digimon in play, we gain a memory. If we have a green Digimon in play, we gain a memory. But more importantly, on our turn, when one of our Digimon digivolves into a Digimon with 2 or more colors, we can suspend this card to then unsuspend that tamer, and then the security effect, as always, play the card without paying its memory cost. So just like Davis, it's not as strong as it's going to be as if it's in the Imperial Dramon deck, but the amount of benefit that we get off of the your turn skill is more important in my opinion than the extra memory. Sure, it would be nice to be able to consistently start off our turn at like a 5 memory, but even if we're able to do just 4, you're going to be able to make multiple plays within that to really be a nuisance and be aggressive. Being able to unsuspend our Digimon when it digivolves into a Digimon with 2 or more colors just allows us to be even more aggressive when we're trying to do some of our armored form tricks and shenanigans, and that is the main reason we want this card in this deck. But as I've learned in the past, I am definitely not the best when it comes to just putting a deck profile together and putting in the optimal cards. I love when you guys come back and tell me that you would run this idea or this idea. It just absolutely blows my mind, the amount of variations that you can put in a deck. And this is no different. And all honesty, I'm looking at it already and I could see these cards being able to fit in very well if you wanted to. First up, you have Upamon. Like I said, this tends to be the more popular pick as far as the Digitama goes from what I've seen in the past. I'm just not as big of a fan as most people are, because I do think it depends more on your opponent hard playing a Digimon with no Digivolution cost, or sources, sorry, rather than you being able to strip and force this into effect. But we do have a little way of doing that if we play the Kumamon at any point. So it could potentially work in this deck. I just don't see it being the optimal choice. Before I went Upamon, I would actually think about going with the Alt Force Veemon Demi Veemon Digitama, just because if we have our Alt Force Veemon in hand, we're drawing until we get more than 7 cards, and then we could start triggering this 8 or more cards in your hand effect. It's just a matter of what you think is more likely to happen or what you value more. Do you value that potential card draw, or do you value the potential DP boost? Speaking of card draw, we also have another Veemon that you could throw in there. This is the Veemon that has the inheritable ability of on your turn, once per turn, if this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your main phase, you could trigger draw 1. So we were running the X Veemon that gives you, or I'm sorry, the EX1 Veemon that gives you the +1 memory. This one has the same effect. It's just this gives you that card draw. So again, it's what would you value more, having an extra card in your hand or the extra memory to do something with. Next up is Lobomon. Like I said, this tends to be the more popular pick when it comes to the hybrid to include in the deck. I went with the Kumamon again for the extra benefit of being able to kind of weaken the inheritables of one of your Digimon, but you could go with straight Lobomon here. He is a little stronger with 5k rather than the 4, but as far as hard play and Digivolution cost, they are the same. Now, Megadeth is the last card that I included here. I've seen a handful of Veemon decks that have included this card. It is a nice, powerful card because it allows you to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon and then unsuspend one of yours, which can play into some of the effects that we have with the deck. I just think it's going to be a little tough to be able to consistently get this card off because you do have to have a blue-green card on the field to play it. Now, we do have a couple of that. We have the 4 Lydramon. We also have the 3 Davis and Ken. But if you don't have those in play at any point for some reason, then it's tough to really be able to pull off this card. But it probably still wouldn't hurt for you to throw in a card here or there if you really wanted to. So that's going to do it for the Armored Veemon deck profile. I hope that you guys enjoy it. As always, please go ahead, hit me up in the comments below and let me know what you guys think or what changes you would make. I would love to discuss this with you. And then again, I know I touched on it at the beginning, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all the support and the views so far. I really appreciate it. I was not expecting this to get the number of views that it's gotten in this short time that I've had this channel together. I know it's not anything in the grand scheme of YouTube, but as somebody that's just kind of doing this for fun with no thoughts or wants to monetize it in any way or try to get money out of it, and just trying to kind of have a creative outlet to talk about stuff that he enjoys. Again, I appreciate it. Every view makes me smile. When I start seeing videos get into triple digits, that blows my mind. Heck, I've got the Tyrannomon video that's starting to get close to 1,000 by itself. So it's really carrying the channel so far. So, but regardless, again, thank you. And until then, we'll catch you in the next one.